Good afternoon. We are all set to start our next session, which talks about the future trends in technology. And we couldn't have had a more distinguished panel than the one that we have this afternoon to discuss this. Mr. Kiran Karnik, I would say those interested in technology, Mr. Karnik needs no introduction, a former president of NESCOM, well regarded for his contribution to the IT sector. He has been part of the PM's Scientific Advisory Council and the National Innovation Council. Currently, he is the chairperson of Indraprastha Institute of Information Technology and HelpAge India. And Mr. Karnik has been conferred many awards, including the Padma Shri. Saket Modi, co-founder and CEO of Lucidus, an enterprise cybersecurity and digital business risk quantification. Lucidus protects the digital infrastructure of many Fortune 500 companies around the world with its cyber risk measurement and mitigation platform called SAFE. Both Saket and his company have been recipient of many awards, including the Champion of Change from the Government of India. And as recently as yesterday at the event Prarambh, which was for the startups, Saket got an opportunity to present to the Indian Prime Minister. So we know that he is really a whiz-kid as far as technology is concerned. And Bhaskar Pramanik, certainly not a stranger to the Vasant Vihar community and to the Vasant Vihar Litfest. Bhaskar, welcome back to Vasant Vihar Litfest.
Thank you. Thank you.
After a brief interlude of 11 months, we were there in person last year. And I would say that the future trends in technology got sort of exposed to us much earlier than we thought they would, because the lockdown has forced technology on people who didn't know how to, touch a smartphone or use the various apps or the various video conferencing facilities. And that incidentally includes my wife, who's been doing online classes on on computer. So the future technology, as I said, has dawned upon all of us even before we would have suspected they would 11 months ago. And you are the guys who will tell us more about it. Just a quick word about Bhaskar Pramanik, retired as chairman of Microsoft India. And he's an accomplished management leader and professional from the technology industry. So over to you, Bhaskar. You are the boss of this session.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the introductions. And, I just wanted to say a few more words about Kiran and Saket. I've known Kiran for close to about 15 years. And besides all the, positions which he has held, including guiding the IT industry through as chairman of NASSCOM, he's also a prolific author. And I would strongly recommend each one of you in the audience to actually to read the books which he has written. In fact, the best part about his books is it's all about technology from the Indian context. And all the examples he gives is about India, which is very unique, because most of the literature which you read, most of the well-known books which you read, always give examples on the Western context. And Kiran has been a great philosopher, friend, and guide for me. And therefore, I was very thankful when he actually accepted this invitation to be the speaker on this session. Saket is somebody I've got to know for the last 18 months. And I've been very impressed by him as an individual and his passion for what he does. And that's why I requested both of them, and we're going to look at, technology from a different context, because if you think about digital technology, it was formerly the exclusive domain of large governments, institutions, and commercial enterprises. But the dot-com boom of the early 2000s showed how technology could change the lives of billions of people. And with the rise of social mobility, analytics, and cloud technologies, the pace of change increased to cover most part of our lives. How we live, work, and play has dramatically changed. And I think the pandemic has actually hastened the pace of that adoption of technology. for us consumers. In fact, by the middle of the last decade, uh, historians were actually saying that we were going to reach the golden age of mankind. The historian Noah Harari proclaimed that humankind had evolved to a stage where disease had been conquered, hunger defeated, and the threat of global war had all but disappeared. He also proclaimed that henceforth humankind, with the help of technology, would strive over the next 2 decades so that mankind or humankind would focus on how to be happy, how they would seek immortality, and how would they grant themselves divine powers. Now we all know that this did not happen. The prophecy did not happen as we expected it to, not because of the lack of technology innovations, uh, but it was or new inventions, but because our human values and institutions were not able to keep pace with the advancements in technology. Deglobalization, nationalistic fervor, economic disparity, and then the pandemic felled our aspirations. But as humankind, we continue to strive going forward. And now the pandemic is hopefully becoming a bad memory, will hopefully become a bad memory. So, what I would request, Kiran, is you have been associated with the Indian technology industry for a long time. The consumerization of technology in India has taken time, but it's now well established. And again, thanks to the pandemic, the usage has been accelerated. How do you see this play out?
Thank you, Bhaskar, and good evening to all participants. And thank you very much also to the Vasant Vihar Club for this Litfest. It's a pleasure to be here and to join. This is, Bhaskar, a very interesting transition. I spent a few minutes at the last session and caught the last part of it. So moving from the past and from poetry to the present and future and to technology is indeed an interesting transition. And as you said, the big transitions happening in technology. So Bhaskar, as you said, let me first start very briefly with some thoughts about where technology is today in terms of how it's got consumerized and penetrated, just briefly. And I will desist from commenting too much on things which I have here on the pandemic and health, which we might come to later. But just first, a very broad sense of, in a few minutes, an overview as I see it. For most of us in earlier years, technology was minimal in our lives. It was not a major force. It was certainly not ubiquitous. And I yet remember the probable interactions with technology as in new modern technology beyond what you might call the transportation sector was really the transistor radio, if anything, which began and penetrated comparatively deeply into India compared to any other device. And contrast that now with the cell phone, which is already, numbers of more than 1 billion and probably is in the hands of 700 million Indians or more. It's the most common household gadget all over India and indeed probably in the world. And what this does is create wonders which are embedded in it thanks to new technology of communication, of data analytics, of artificial intelligence, none of which you and I see as a consumer. We just see simple interfaces which can help get us there. If you look at any sector today that are part of our day-to-day life, and look at banking, look at education, look at health, look at what we do in our social interactions, and you see how much of a role technology plays. Those from the generation which is that of you and I, Bhaskar, and I guess many of our audience would yet remember going to a bank and picking up a token and waiting and remembering what day of the week is it, and have you got there before 2 o'clock to withdraw your own money from your own bank, only from your own branch in your own city. And today, 24/7, anywhere in the country, take out your card, go into an ATM, you can get money. You don't have to bother about physical branches. You don't have to bother about where you are. You don't have to bother about waiting to get a token. And this is so common that one doesn't even think of it. But, when I look back at when I was growing up, I think of what a transition technology has wrought in the way we live. If you look at health today, and as I said, I'll come back to health, but everything from, just searching for what might ail you and looking at the symptoms and doing a Google search, to wearables, which tell you about so many parameters of how you're doing in terms of whether you exercised enough and whether you need to walk more, how many steps have you taken, what's your pulse rate, what's your heart rate, all kinds of things getting more and more sophisticated, much of which depends on data collected from you, sent often to somewhere, transmitted to a backend which analyzes it and comes back and tells you what you need to do. Uh, and it's become so common now that people refer to any ailment they have. And as you know, I've said elsewhere, my doctor got so fed up of looking at these people coming and telling him, "Doctor, you're telling me this, but actually on the net I saw this and this." So he finally told me, "I'm quite fed up." I said, "Yes, more people trust Dr. Google than trust you today." So Dr. Google has become the new family doc, the first point of call, after which you might go to a specialist or a hospital. We all know about education, mainly thanks to the pandemic, where children, grandchildren, anybody at home has been sitting and working on courses which are necessarily online. And for many of us, such courses which you don't have to take, but you want to take, something you want to learn, all available online, very often at no cost. And one doesn't think of all the technology that goes into creating, transmitting, receiving these courses. And if you're doing a course that's a certified one, taking an assignment, sending it back, they're analyzing it, and the fact that all this helps people to improve content, make it more user friendly, make it more learner oriented, and make it something which is easy to grasp and understand. Shopping, of course, again, thanks to pandemic, everybody now knows everything about e-commerce, and you can get anything and everything online. Click of a button and delivered to your doorstep. Very literally, it's not yet been dematerialized, but it arrives straight to your doorstep by a click of a button. And I think that's what's telling you on all these fronts. The last one I just want to touch on is the change in social interaction, sometimes for the good, sometimes for what I consider not so good. The good part is connect with friends, relatives, professional colleagues anywhere in the globe, anytime, on a video call, sending data across, having discussions, collaborating on a common project through collaborative platforms, all enabled by technology and made easier. And some of this has helped us in our pandemic, and we'll come to that later. But this has been tremendous, the amount of collaboration, the amount of contact you can have, both socially and professionally on this. Of course, the sad part is I've often gone pre-pandemic days into a restaurant and found four people sitting at a table at a cafe and having coffee, and they're all on their phones, most probably texting each other, but not talking to each other. I mean, this is part of the electronic wars that have come up between us. But I think many people say that's a small price to pay for all the conveniences that you have. So it's got into our daily life in such a way, it's become ubiquitous, and it's become an item of consumption, so to say. And it's become really one more item which we're so used to that we don't even think about it. It's almost like I wouldn't say air, but the electricity around us, which is used for so many things in our houses, and we don't think about it, we come and put it on, except when it goes off, just like the net. The minute it's off, you have disaster. Otherwise, you don't even think about it. So just those few comments at this point, Bhaskar. I have many more, but I want to stop here now.
No, thank you. I just wanted this to be more from an introductory perspective. We'll dive more into the healthcare sector a little later. But turning to Saket, both Kiran and I are from a generation called the baby boomers. In fact, when I graduated from IIT, the integrated circuit hadn't been invented. But for some reason, I've spent most of my life, the next 40 to 50 years of my life, 40 years of my life, actually dabbling on technology. And I think the same is with Kiran. He started his career with the space organization. Now, you're a millennial. You've actually been born with a technology spoon in your mouth. And for you, you don't know of a life where technology didn't exist. So share with us from the perspective of a millennial, how do you see the consumerization of technology?
Got it. First of all, before I go into your question, sir, it's truly an honor to be speaking here. A millennial who is a technocrat grows up hearing stories of Bhaskar sir, Kiran sir. So it's truly an honor to be virtually sharing the stage with you. So thank you so much for the opportunity for having me here. Now, to your question, sir. I look at it more like, how you look at it from a phygital perspective, how there is an intersection between digital and physical. And how I would say the extended brain, if we can call it as, for things which were dumb. And when I say that, I'm talking about a watch used to be dumb, and now, if you get a smartwatch, it probably does everything apart from showing you the time. And if you you know sit on a IoT enabled sofa or a smart TV, right? I mean, the average intelligence of things around us, it's really skyrocketed. And I can really cluster that into three big trends on the consumer side of things, adding to what Kiran sir was saying. The first and the big trend, which I would say is really striking everybody, is the whole emergence of how do you deal with so much amount of data which is out there. Because all of us today, the mobile phone has suddenly become an extended part of our bodies, right? And it really is something that people, starting from the morning all the way till the time they're going to bed, they have. And whether it's your professional or your personal lives, it's really centered around this window of your cell phone, your iPads, or your laptop, which is out there. With that, there is this explosion of data which is right now happening. And because there's this explosion of data, most people unfortunately do not realize this. And I think so that humans are not as smart that they think they are. And I'll explain why I say that is because if you take the average probability of a subset of population, you can actually quite predictably call out certain future outcomes based on the previous learnings of that sample set of population. And it's been proven too many times, right? Number of wars, number of pandemics, I mean, the whole insurance industry actually works on that data science. At some point, collecting that data was an extremely difficult job because you had to make people fill in the forms, and you had to go individually, take interviews, surveys, etc., etc. Today, in your hand, you actually have something which is over 1,000 times more powerful in computation than the first Apollo mission that went to the moon, right? You have something far more powerful for storage. Till 5 years back, all of libraries combined on the planet, you can actually store that on your hands, right? And it's not just static storage, right? The access that you've got to this universe of digital, it's explosive. And the problem there is it's not just access, the way you're accessing it, that is something which is so easily traceable. I get people all the time, unfortunately, saying things like, Saket, you know what? I have an Apple iPhone which uses a fingerprint scanner to go in, so nobody can hack me. And it's just unfortunate. And again, they're not to blame. The reason why they would say something like this, which is not very scientific, is because we have never been trained on how to use a cell phone, how to use the internet, right? It's always been our peers who will come and say, hey, have you gone to yahoo.com? There's this new app called Zoom where you can do virtual calls. But what about that three critical settings on Zoom that you really need to enable, or your data or your conversations can be recorded, it can be snooped into, and can be made public, is generally 99.9% people, they don't get access to that. So the first, and I'm not talking about data that you work on, of course, that itself is big, but the metadata and the whole debate around Signal and WhatsApp in the last 2 weeks that we've seen, there's an explosion of metadata. And I'm a geek and a nerd by pride. I'm a computer science engineer. So you can always look at objects or parameters where you have certain classes. We're saying every individual, right? A simple classification would be what is their IQ, what is their EQ, and then so many other Qs that have come in these days. But these are all parameters you can associate based on the activity people are doing. And based on that, it's actually almost very scary when you involve psychology and this huge data piece which is there. So that's like this huge data wave which is going on, whether they people want it or not. That's one big one. The way it is happening, and that's the second piece which is big, is cloud. Because today there are a gazillion apps which are free of cost. That means, in a third tier city of any country, you can just log in and start using. And it is, if you use WhatsApp, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, I mean, their technology is the best on the planet. So this entire cloud evolution on the consumer side. Of course, on the enterprise that's happening, and we know that. But the consumer access to the cloud, they don't think of it as a cloud, but the access to most cutting edge technology free of cost is this huge trend, because of which that first part, the data, is exploding. So they are correlated to each other. And of course, the horizontal that cuts across, the third trend, uh, and people are increasingly getting aware of that, is obviously cybersecurity, because you suddenly realize that everything that you knew about yourself physically, now there's available virtually. And when you do that, uh, most people are shocked to see what information about them is available on the deep and dark web or the internet, which is out there. More than 90% of the people who come in the creamy layer of India, with a with more than a particular number, for their income and their status, etc., etc., you can get most of their information online in some or the other shape or form. So that the knowing how important privacy is, because it's as important as physical security. It's becoming that physical or digital security, where digital security comes in. These are like the three big trends, I would say, where data and artificial intelligence, machine learning, the cloud adoption, and then of course cybersecurity. Just adding to everything what sir said, and I of course resonate everything that he said. I think that's more from a techies angle, why it's happening, what it's happening, from a consumerization perspective, sir. So those are like my quick thoughts around, why the consumers' behavior is changing, and it would really change for the rest of the future. So
Great, great. Thanks, Saket, for those introductory remarks. And now we'd really like to get into two specific areas around this whole consumerization of technology. I think Kiran has talked about the fact that it's impacting all aspects of our life, whether it is financial transactions, e-commerce, how we shop, how we entertain ourselves, how we do financial transactions, how we educate and learn ourselves, even lifestyles. You can do many things, these days without even having to go to a gym. You can do it from home. And I think the pandemic has pushed more and more of these creative applications, and especially in India, where the millennials have actually adopted technology to a larger extent. We are seeing that actually, mushroom into a large number of startups, which have created, different kinds of services and capabilities, which we couldn't have perhaps even conceived of earlier. So one of the areas which I think, especially because of the pandemic, which has really come to the fore, is in the area of healthcare. And today, technology is not just in the form of wearables and wellness, or how do you manage your wellness, or even from a diagnostics perspective, but it's even around the areas of drug discovery. So, Kiran, would you like to share some of the thoughts around how technology is shaping healthcare? And like I mentioned, at one time we thought that we had, mankind, along with technology, had sort of conquered disease, and then the pandemic came, and then we had also said that now we would look forward to immortality. Or immortality. How are we? How is technology helping us to move towards that goal?
Yeah, Bhaskar, I was about to speak just on that, starting with Noah Harari and immortality and where we are today. And then I want to step a bit into the pandemic and what technology has done to help speed up things, which would see us into a better world. Just a comment on what Saket said, though, he mentioned, and this also pertains to health, how many of the dumb things that we had around us, and he mentioned watches, have become smart. And I do hope that someday, one of the dumb things that become smart is human beings. Because as you said, Bhaskar, in your initial comments, and as Noah Harari has commented in some ways also, the human mind and what we are doing there hasn't evolved as fast as other things have. But back to the health and the part which he commented on, immortality. And I want to just give some simple examples and take it forward from there, Bhaskar. We are all familiar with knee implants, let's say, knee replacement. And now it's yet a sophisticated operation and is not commonplace, but it has spread. It's not difficult. It can be done. If you have the money, you can go and get your knee fixed. And basically fixing it can mean just repairing it, or it can mean a knee replacement. Now, when you look at it and you look at the things that are happening and relate them to both technology and health, it takes you to a different dimension altogether. We are all familiar with the word ventilator now, thanks to the pandemic, and it's basically in some way a replacement for some of your lung functions, which are put outside the body. It's yet large, it's difficult, but it exists. We are familiar with dialysis, which replaces the function of your kidney in some way. It's yet large, difficult. You have to go into a special place like a clinic or a hospital to get it done. But you can already see that, like everywhere else, technology is going to make this sophisticated, smaller, easier, cheaper, more portable. And it's not far-fetched to think of the equivalent of a knee transplant happening for a kidney or a lung, where you get something artificial and different implanted. And already some of this has begun to happen, so it's not quite science fiction. It's within the realm of existing technology, pushing it a little bit. But a few years from now, this sort of thing is going to be quite common, where parts of your body that are not quite functional are replaced and a new one put in. Now, what's going to happen once this begins and gets around, and once it gets more sophisticated? No part of your body needs to wear out. Anything that's worn out will be replaced. So basically, what's going to happen? What's going to kill you? I mean, next to nothing, because anything that's going wrong can be fixed by either, if not repair, then replacement. And so you go on forever, and that's what's going to make you immortal. So immortality is not necessarily a philosophical, spiritual, or religious concept. It's one that technology could well bring about a few years from now, barring other things that might happen. This seems something that could very well take place. Of course, it's a different issue on the philosophical plane, and I should mention this, that when I ask groups of people, do you want to be immortal? The instant reaction is, yeah, great. I mean, why not? You know, who doesn't want to live on? And after a few moments thought, if I tell them to think about it and come back, I know a lot of people, very often a majority, who say, no, that's not a great idea. Who wants to live forever and ever? But look at the social consequences of this, and I don't want to dwell too much on them. If not immortality, long, long life. I mean, Bhaskar, you and I probably, and I hate to say this, but will not touch a century. But Saket and his generation will definitely cross a century, without a doubt. I have no question on my mind. Technology will enable that. So what will happen when you have so many older people? Are you going to have lesser children being born? Is this going to be a planet of old people? Are you going to altogether have only a certain generation living and nobody else being born at all? And what does it mean for society? What does it mean for interaction? What does it mean for people's psychology? So you have a whole host of questions that come from dimensions that are not just purely philosophical, they're also ethical and they're social. You have another dimension which technology is beginning to do, and that may be sooner than we expect. And let me spend just one moment, Bhaskar, if you allow, on a tangential anecdote. You know, in the very early years of the cell phone, when they were not so common in India, I was out in Italy, and a taxi driver was taking me from one city to the other. And as Italians, like Indians, are prone, he was speaking on the phone while driving at probably 140, 150 kilometers per hour on the highway, lovely highway, so quite safe, but driving on it. Then he started speaking on the phone with the phone in one hand. Then, like, as I said, like all Italians and Indians, he started waving both hands in drama. No, this is not on. I don't want this to happen. And of course, there was nobody holding the steering wheel. And my heart was in my mouth. And I thought to myself, if this guy must speak on the phone, I wish there was something where he could just speak. And of course, that's commonplace now. Put your phone, put it on speakerphone, you can hear you speak. And then I thought a little more. And about 15 years back, I just suggested this in a talk, saying, you know, instead of having this, why not put that thing, not just an earpiece, but why not put it into your brain so you can directly hear what's happening and you don't have to speak, your thoughts will convey what's happening. 15 years ago, this seemed a bit stretched, but you might remember the famous physicist Stephen Hawking already had an equivalent because he could speak. And you know, in many senses, his thoughts, to stretch it a bit, were being converted and coming out as speech. So not as far-fetched as you think. Now imagine that sort of thing embedded, hopefully not a cell phone, we don't want to keep talking all the time, but a memory chip in your brain, which is linked to your brain, augmenting your memory, just like you augment the memory of your computer or your cell phone, everything implanted there, and not just all the data that you need, but data that's continuously updated. Saket spoke of updating and what happens in the cloud and accessible anywhere. Imagine something that's in your brain with a data bank that's constantly updated with the latest. Again, huge ramifications for what this might mean. And, you know, two things I want to mention. One is, you know, you'll have babies being born who already have a PhD without going to college or school, because they have all the knowledge there. So what's going to happen to the education system? What do you need by way of education in the formal academic information knowledge sense? Everything is there and constantly updated. So it's a better PhD than even the degree that Saket may have done probably last year or 2 years ago. He must have just graduated, I'm sure. He looks young enough for that. But more up to date than that. But think of something else also, which is also a question I often pose to audiences which are physical and able to answer. If you had that kind of memory, everything will be stored. Nothing will be forgotten. You will not forget anything at all. Now, is that a memory you want? Do you want all your memories to be unforgotten and to remind you every now and then of certainly good things, but bad things too? And once again, first people say, yes, great to be able to remember everything, including, names of people whom people like me, maybe you, Bhaskar, forget names when you meet somebody. Suddenly you say, I know this guy, but I don't know his name. You don't have to do that. You straight away know the names, but also all the bad memories that you have. And I'm not so sure that's such a good idea and what it means. But I think, again, to quickly come back to where we are, technology, the combination of electronics, sophisticated software, and modern health technology is taking us very definitely, willy-nilly, whether we've thought about it or no, to a point where humans will live for a long, long, long time, if not forever. And disease seems to be conquerable. This seemed to be very much the scenario, as Harari, to come back to him, mentioned when he said, humankind has conquered famine, disease, and war. And famine may be true, disease and war doesn't seem to be happening yet. But the pandemic reminded us in a forceful way. And the reason is very simple. The same technologies that enable us to solve all these tremendous problems can help solve some of them, but can also help to create them. And it's a nuclear bomb. It's a virus coming out of a lab, not out of the jungle, that can devastate humanity. So what happens then? And this is, I think, the big problem. That part I want to leave there and just spend a minute or two on what technology has done in the case of the pandemic. A few things which are very, very obvious. One is testing. When we first got the virus, it was quickly analyzed, very, very fast, much faster than ever in the past. They understood its, you might say, genetic makeup, and therefore were able to devise tests very quickly. The tests were first difficult and expensive. Very quickly, technology enabled them to become faster, and you had quick turnarounds of a few hours. And right here in India, IIT Delhi, I think, has developed a paper test, which they say can give you a result in 20, 30 minutes, yet to be rolled out, but things like that are happening. So diagnosis, testing, complete analysis of the genomic structure of the virus, which enables you to both fight it with medicines and to develop vaccines. Vaccine development normally takes 5 to 10 years. In this case, just over a year, and the first vaccines are already not just being spoken about, but actually being injected around the world in many countries, including India, from yesterday. And this has been possible because of developments aided by technology, partly data science, which has taken all the data, pulled it together, narrowed down the possibilities, and doing a lot of work, you might say, in silica instead of in vitro, in the computer instead of in the test tube, which enables you to speed up things. Platforms, which I spoke about earlier, that enable scientists around the world to collaborate, put together their work, and move forward, building on each other's work and quickly get there. And finally, actually creating the virus and producing it in quantity in a completely safe form. That's also involved technology of a different type, of a production type. And very, very soon, we're going to see more vaccines, simpler vaccines, not necessarily 2 doses, 1 dose, not necessarily injection, but probably a nasal one, just breathe in. And you probably, inevitably, in a year, in my prediction is in a year or year and a half, you will see a test where, like a metal detector, you practically walk through and it detects whether or not you have a virus, or at least maybe a breath test of some kind, like a sweat test, which just tells you what is in your body. And I think these are being facilitated in such a way by technology that they will become reality soon. So that's the excitement about technology. But as I said earlier, technology creates its own problems, not only ethical, but it can create the viruses, it can create the problems. And ultimately, of course, that's not technology, that's the minds of men. So we come back to end to, yes, smart devices, intelligent homes, but hopefully smart people and intelligent people too.
Very well, very well put. So, one more area which I thought we could touch upon is this whole area of data and especially around privacy and cybersecurity. Practically everything we do these days is being logged somewhere, whether it is a camera outside within our condominiums, camera inside the home, camera outside. You just never know when you're actually being captured. And all the data which you are sharing, sending, WhatsApp, social media, all of that is being recorded. In fact, I think it was around 2001, 2002, I used to work for a company called Sun Microsystems, and we used to have a very maverick CEO called Scott McNeely. And he was once asked by the press, what do you think about data privacy? He says, privacy, if you're on the internet, forget it. And I think that's one of the clear messages I've learned, which is why I've never been on Facebook, is that if you want to protect your privacy, then don't use social media, or use it for very specific purposes and limit yourself. And I remember there was a secretary to the government of India. I think in those days it was called the Department of Electronics, may have moved to MIT. And he told me that, look, the maximum number of people who use Facebook are actually from India and Saudi Arabia. And he says that I can understand that because, if you just take a train from New Delhi railway station to Calcutta during, let's say, Durga Puja, you get to know everybody on the train in the sleeper berths, at least two rows on the left side, 2 rows on the right side. And by the time you reach there, all the families would have shared the last 7 generations of their families and perhaps looked at matchmaking and everything else. And they've shared everything. So he says that as a nation, we really don't care about privacy because we love to talk about ourselves and we love to share that information. But the digital age, there are marauders. These are not social interactions. There are state actors. There are criminal elements. There are even other kinds of organizations or people who are fraudsters who are trying to hack into your data. So Saket, that's your area. That's the focus which you've had. And you've played a very critical and important role protecting enterprises. Share with us some of your thoughts as to how, as consumers, we can protect our data. How can we sort of get better privacy? And what are the elements of data sharing which we should be aware of when we use various applications?
Okay, so a number of questions there, sir. So I will go one by one. Before I jump into data privacy, sir, I just wanted to, as a continuation to what Kiran sir was saying, can I just add a few elements of privacy on that side? Because it just becomes a continuation because it's all about data and some interesting takes that it might have, and then because it just becomes a continuation. I hope you'll be okay.
Go ahead. This is a discussion. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. So Kiran said, in fact, some very, very interesting, stuff that you were talking about, right? When you started by talking about organ replacement, it almost sounded like a story out of, our mythology where, Shiva replaces an organ and, you have a new head on top of his own son and things around that, right? So I think that's, can you hear me? Just a second.
Yes, we can. Yes,
okay,
we can.
Okay, give me exactly 1 second. I just have something which is constantly bothering me. Give me 1 second, I'll just be back.
Too many sensors.
Sorry, the third time my Amazon delivery guy had gone back, so I had to take this. Okay. So coming back, Kiran sir, they almost look like what it was there. The second piece which you also spoke about mortality, right? I mean, one of the key things again with all the healthcare and the science which is evolving, right? The way and again, I'm very young to comment on this and I know very little, but the funny thing about mortality is that for me, giving a longer life to somebody, it's like, somebody has cancer who has, 3 years and you give them 6 years. I think one of the good parts of being in India has always been that, look, it is not about the number of years. It's always been about, finding the purpose, right? And that was the whole point, right? And after a point, you actually become so full of hardwired thoughts and, things where you can't change yourself, and therefore there's a hit refresh that is required, so that you come back in the next life with a fresh brain, and then hopefully go towards. And the reason I'm saying that, that's a very interesting thing around, if we get mortality where our memory is preserved in an extended cloud or a data center which is out there, it can actually be one of the worst nightmares or the worst punishments you can give to an individual, because then there's no hit refresh, right? I mean, it can just be like, look, this is the way I am, this is the way world is, and this is the way I want it to be forever. So in fact, when you talk about the modifications of mind, one of the books I've read, which I really cherish, is this thing called this is by Patanjali. It's called Yoga Sutras, where he actually talks about the divisions of mind, where he talks about sleep, he talks about imagination, he talks about memory. And memory is that part where it's very easy to store, right? I mean, our hard disks, and basically you have images which can be easily broken down, which you understand much better than me. So I was just thinking while you speak that you can do that, but it probably will be used for people to punish them rather than actually wanting to. And you very rightly already pointed out that most people, when they think about it and come back, so I think it's like natural. It's natural to get to the point where you need that hit refresh after a point. It's almost like, look, you have to give up beyond a point, right? It's not working out for you. Come back, and then hopefully you can go to the right process which is there. So that was something very interesting. And then of course we spoke about the whole disease and the how the solution is coming, but then the number of diseases also is going up, right? I like saying this with all I'm sure you're following with the UK strain and all of that. So, the joke is this, that, while scientists are trying to figure out a vaccine, coronavirus is busy releasing security patches so that, things stop working, right? So I feel that, as a human race, whatever little I know, that there will always be new kinds of diseases, new kinds of ways by which, you'll balance. You probably will be able to, go to Mars and go to Pluto at some point, right? But the universe is way too large. So I don't think there's anything which says the other side of the universe. And I think that's where, I think being an Indian becomes very, 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 very lucky, because I think we had a lot of people who really drilled down on life, because these questions have always been there in the head of humans, right? For thousands of years. And I think, there are some facts. But coming to Bhaskar, sir, your point about privacy and centering on that, right? Because at the end of the day, and I love what Tim Cook said, this was a Stanford convocation speech. And imagine this is the world's biggest company's most important person, Apple's CEO, talking to arguably one of the best university on the planet's students who are graduating. And he has like 14 minutes to talk. Do you know the first thing that he spoke about? And this is from last year's convocation speech of Stanford University. The first thing he talked about is the fact that using technology, how being human is almost getting eradicated. And I'll explain what that means. What he's saying is that, look, what people don't realize, that every time you put a censorship or you hack somebody's inbox, you listen to somebody's chats or conversations, what you're doing is essentially that every single innovation which requires the Rabindranath Tagore's line, let the mind be free, and then let the words come from the depth of truth. They only come when you have that degree of freedom to think, to be creative, to be out of the box. Now, if everybody who's chatting or talking on the phone feels that somebody is listening to me, and guess what? There might be nobody listening to them also. But the very fact that, you feel that your data of any kind is being surveyed upon, the fundamental quality of being human, and I personally feel, and that's where automation comes in, it is not to do automated stuff what robots can do. Automated cars, I mean, a lot of drivers drive cars, with all respect to them, but the fact is that's not what we humans are good at, right? Those are automated things. You don't use the most important part of your brain. It's just a redundant part of your brain which is doing calculations that, if the road turns right, please turn right. It doesn't need any intelligence. It doesn't need any poetry that comes out. Poetry comes out from a very different place. It doesn't come out based on what you've read, with other things. So coming back to the point I was making, sir, is that's what Tim Cook's thoughts were when it talked about privacy. It is so fundamental, front and center for the future. And if we don't ensure that, it will be a disaster. because then you're talking about ways, and China, for example, already has this, where every payment you make, every time you click on an app through WeChat, for example, they actually have a real-time credit monitoring identity score of yours, where if you've, for now, they say if you've not repaid your loan, we will catch you from anywhere, because those are these face detection or facial recognition, you know cameras everywhere. You will be barred to take a metro, you'll be barred to go into a movie theater, and the moment you go there, the police will come and catch you. Now that's good, as long as you say that is only for people who have not paid the loan. But then who restricts them to actually use the same thing to people who are chanting anti-government slogans out there, right? I mean, you can basically use that technology in any and every way that you want. If you've not watched it, I highly recommend you to watch a Netflix TV series called Black Mirror. It is the only TV series ever which has been made a mandatory course, TV series to watch in the first year of computer science at MIT. The special thing about that TV series is every episode is about the future extreme usage of technology, but none of that is voodoo. None of that is based on fiction. It's basically taking today's concept and extending it where it can go in the future. So the computer science first year students at MIT, they actually look at each episode and they say, hey, how is technology being used to actually make that happen? So I highly recommend everybody to watch that. And those are like my thoughts around privacy, sir. It's like going to be the front and center about anything that we do, because anything that you do has a digital horizontal to it, whether professionally or personally. And the earlier people understand that, accept that, adapt that, the better it becomes. So those are my thoughts on privacy and things.
Saket, one other, recently you've come out with a application which helps individuals to figure out how secure their mobile phone is. Uh, I think, most of your work has been in the area of enterprise security. Why did you suddenly come out with an application which any consumer can download, put it onto his mobile phone, and check, how safe? That's the word you use. How safe is his phone from a cybersecurity perspective?
Sure. I'll take one step back, sir, to tell you why we came here. The history of our company has been, my customers today include Google, Facebook, Morgan Stanley, P&G, like some of the largest enterprises on the planet. I've been serving them. What have I been doing traditionally? I actually give them a breach likelihood real-time posture for their infrastructure. So that can be cloud workloads, it can be their data centers, it can be their applications, you name it, right? Most of them came back to me saying, hey, you know what, Saket, we like what you're doing with technology, but 90% of my breaches have a people element to it. What are you doing for people? Can you help us with people? He said, well, that's a very, very valid point. According to Gartner, the people security market in cybersecurity is actually growing at 42% CAGR year over year. We said, hey, not only is that one or two customers ask, but this is a huge market which is growing. So we said, okay, we will go there. The next step was, how do we go there? Because if you look at digital marketing, you actually get every element in your inbox, in your feed, on your social media, very, very tailor-made and customized based on what you've clicked, what you've searched, and all of those things. So what we do is, sir, that we said, hey, it has to be a mobile application, because that's the one thing that everybody carries, so that we can customize based on the behavior of the individual, what security requirements that they have, and then give it to them. And the last piece, when we were building it for the enterprise and it was a mobile app, my team said, hey, you know what? Why not put it out there in the consumer space? And consumer, as you know, has to be free of cost always. So we just made it free of cost. It's called Safe Me. Everybody can just go and download that app. It's available live on apps, both iOS and Android store. If you download it, it'll give you a score. It will show you, if your leaked credentials are there, how secured is your phone, and give you hundreds of cybersecurity courses, 3-minute courses on what to do to secure your Paytm, your Uber, your Bheem, all of those things. So it's like a very simple, free of cost things for people to download. Sir, I hope that answered your question.
No, I did. Thank you. And I think we're just got about 4 minutes. I am not able to see any questions from the audience, but if there are, and I don't know whether there is a means by which we can see those questions.
I think there are one or two questions which have been sent on your chat, Bhaskar.
Yeah, okay. So there's one question. which says immortality means never aging. I don't think so. If one was to live forever in the physical state of a 90-year-old, who wants that? So,
90-year-old definitely wants that.
Kiran, in case you want to comment on that.
No, just a quick answer, Bhaskar. I know, but I mean, the good thing about immortality in whatever form, in quotes, it happens, would be that you can continue to be young forever because nothing will get old. Not your organs, not your thing, hopefully not your brain. But I think I completely agree with Saket and the reaction I've had from most people that many of us, I would hesitate to say most, would rather have more life in our years than more years in our life. So I think immortality is maybe feasible technologically, but whether it's desirable, I don't know. And just one other comment also to what Saket said. We humans are tremendously creative and innovative. We'll find new ways of killing each other.
The second part to the question is, Saket, you have connected the past to the future so well. The cloud is like our memory bank over generations. Your view?
The cloud is what you make out of it. So for me, it's very simple, right? Think of a hard disk which is sitting somewhere else where you don't know where it is. It's simple. So whether you store memories of generations out there or you store something only for today, for example, something very interesting I can tell you, and you guys should do this: go to WhatsApp and go to chats in the setting and see your cloud backup. You will be shocked and surprised to see that it's been backing up every single chat you've ever had on WhatsApp. And the worst part, you can of course switch it off. The moment you switch it off, it stops taking your backup to the cloud. But you know the worst part? You cannot delete what's already out there on their cloud. They don't allow you to do that. I have my 20 MB of chats from 2014 is when I had disabled it. Till date, they don't give me the option to delete it at all. So and a lot of that can be used for so many reasons. So all I'm saying is the cloud is no rock. It's just, I think it's too hyped up. It's just a hard disk which is sitting somewhere else. So just think of it like that. Kiran, so you're saying something.
Yeah, Bhaskar, if I may, just a quick addition to what Saket just said. Two things. One, of course, Bhaskar, you said you're not on Facebook. I want to say I'm not even on WhatsApp, so forget Facebook. But that apart, I think because of what Saket said, many countries, including India, are now thinking of including a right to forget as a legal right in these cases, so that these things which are there are not stored forever. But that's going on yet.
In fact, it reminds me, I told you the story of Scott McTilly, privacy, forget about it. Another phrase I heard was, once on the internet, always on the internet. So remember that.
Like Hotel California.
Those are the choices we have to make.
Yeah.
So thank you, all of you, Kiran, Saket, for a very lively discussion. Technology is going to continuously evolve. There's no question about it. And it's going to be only limited by the human mind. And how we use it and how do we ensure that we use it ethically is also going to be going to be very important. And how do we use it to solve perhaps the bulk of mankind's problem? The alternate to that is that anything which can be done for the benefit of mankind or humankind can also be used for to detract from humankind. And therefore, we have to have those kinds of checks and balances to ensure that we focus on the positive aspects of technology. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to present our views. The consumerization of technology is here to stay. It will just continue to accelerate. And how we make use of it is left to us as human beings to do the best out of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely enthralling session. We would have loved it to go on for quite a bit longer. Unfortunately, technology, which is a clock in front of me, tells me that the time is up. I just have two quick things to say. Saket, while I was off camera, I downloaded SafeMe.
Okay.
And the other thing that I noted from Mr. Kiran Karnik's, the things that he was saying, that if I want to make my home smart, it's not the devices, but the people in the house must be smart. So I have to make sure on that one. I have here with me my colleague Sumant Mathur, who will give a word of thanks.
Thank you so much. It was such an enthralling session that all of us could pick up something, and I'm sure all our viewers would have really greatly benefited from whatever discussions took place. And thank you so much for being part of our show. And I'm sure that you will get a lot of good feedback from the management and from the people who have viewed your programs. It's my privilege to hand over Momento at the moment virtually, but we make sure that it is received by you eventually at your home. So thank you so much, and all of you for taking your time. And so this is on behalf of our management. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Saket, that was the Amazon guy at your door.
Oh, I know, sir, what I got.
Thank you. Thanks. Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.